Welcome back to the Motivating Force podcast. I am host Sway, and this week we have something special for you. We're going to be interviewing Bill Nelson. He is an entrepreneur in the Central Florida area. He's been in the industry for 35 years. He's worked in numerous corporations for other people. He then went on to ventures where he helped other people and partnerships in creating their businesses to eventually where he's at now, where he's opened up his own individual business for himself and his family. So it's a very interesting conversation. It's very enlightening to those that are seeking the steps needed to open up your own business or start whatever company you want to do for yourself. He talks about his personal experiences going through the field, his journey through it all. We talk about some struggles and some key points that you guys should take into account when you are seeking out this field for yourself. So thank you so much. It's going to be a 2-part episode. Remember to stick around for Wednesday's episode, and I hope you guys enjoy. All right, Bill, pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming in today.
Morning, Josue.
All right, so to start up, we're going to be talking about starting your own business. And for credibility purposes, I just wanted a brief summary of like childhood and like if you had to go through any struggles and if you have any history of your family pretty much like having their own small businesses or, you know, that kind of situation going on.
As far as a family history, none that I know of.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to believe that my father was entrepreneurial.
Okay.
My father passed away when I was 2 years old, so
wow.
I don't know truly what that history is.
And you think having that mindset of wanting him to be that entrepreneurial, like head honcho kind of guy made you the man that you are now?
Everything in your past makes you who you are.
Okay.
So that's kind of hard to answer directly like that.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the tools that I used as a child to give myself direction. I didn't have a horrible upbringing.
Yeah.
There was love. There wasn't good structure. I didn't have a good family from I guess you'd just say like a financial aspect. Okay. Grew up very, very poor.
Yeah.
And spent most of my time watching like my neighbor who, you know, did his own pigs and crops and sold them on the side of the road type of thing, you know?
Well, I was gonna ask real quick. So I don't want it to sound harsh when I say like imaginary, but was it almost like an imaginary role model that you were setting on viewing your father as that entrepreneur? So that's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was that role model that you can base your childhood and like, okay, like I want to strive to be like him.
Right.
That's pretty nice. Okay, and so you talked about like always seeing your neighbor like working on his own things. How does that kind of correlate to, I don't want to say like a hustle and bustle as you were growing up? Like were you always the kind to have multiple jobs or like a main 9 to 5 and then like always have like a side project going on for yourself or like your family? Like did you have to be the one to provide is the question? Because a lot of the people I know that have come from like poor-ish upbringings, they tend to be the one like that has to provide for the family.
I do fall into that category.
Yeah.
When I was 14-ish, I would say I pretty much paid most of the bills for the household.
Okay.
And the fact that at such a young age, I went out there and it'll sound silly, but I mowed grass because what else is a 14-year-old going to do? And I tied in with a couple of local business owners down on 192 that own restaurants and hotels and actually did work with them. And with the restaurant, for example, he was putting up a brick facade behind the cash register area. So being the kind entrepreneurial type of guy that he was, he gave me the opportunity to help him do that.
Yeah.
And it's all those little things that happen in your childhood that give you a direction.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say how much of that was that outside influence versus me seeking it out. Wish I had a good, clear answer for that one, but I don't.
That's okay.
But it's the way it went, and I'm grateful for it because of those opportunities. I mean, I can even remember being really small, 4 or 5 years old, having a neighbor friend that I used to hang out with, and they were the adults. It wasn't the kids that I was hanging out with. And when the guy was doing, say, his reconcreting his driveway, he let me sit with him and tie the strings and, lay the rebar and help.
Yeah. I mean, because he
which,
saw the responsibility
right,
in you at such a young age.
correct.
Okay, that's good.
And all those things do come into play. And then, if anything, based on some of the things I know about you guys and your interviews with your brother, and that's something that I think everybody should keep in mind when they're dealing with kids, because you never know what little nugget they're going to hold on to. And if you don't give them those opportunities, I'm sure at 5 years old, I didn't help this guy do his driveway. He helped me by allowing me to be a part of it and see how it works. Whether I got in his way or actually helped him, it was a huge, well, obviously I still remember it.
Yeah, it's a memorable moment in your life. Yeah.
And those memorable moments do shape you.
Yeah.
And there's times even when I look back in my own fatherly roles and wonder, did I do that enough with my kids? So if anybody's listening, I would say do it. Let your kids wash the dishes, even if they don't do a good job at it, and and help them and guide them.
I mean, yeah, that's the benefit of having chores, right? That's why you give kids chores. But I see what you're saying. You should kind of motivate your kids, like, to do more of like the handy stuff around the house, I guess, or to give you a hand, so then they can kind of see that as like I don't want to say like not like a chore, but they're seeing the benefit of doing something themselves, right? Instead of just, calling the repairman to come, or like taking the easy route.
Taking that whole DIY attitude and
Yeah.
getting things done.
Yeah, and there's also a sense of not comfort, like fulfillment when you do something yourself. And I'm sure now
Pride.
you realize that. Yeah, pride. But like when you're a child, those things do stick with you, like you're saying. And I remember myself when I was a little bit younger, I would always do the same thing. I would hang out with my friends, but then I would get along with their parents. So then if they needed anything, I can always be there to assist. And it's like, it's important. And I'm not seeing it in this younger generation. Since you mentioned my brother, I'm not taking shots at you, but I'm saying, like, just the younger generation as a whole, I don't see that motivation coming from them. He's even mentioned it in the interview that we had with him, that they just kind of want to sit around and just be on their phones. Quote, I want to see that start up in that generation, that like the motivation to do things themselves, to get out there. But I did have a question about this, which you kind of just touched on, where it was about like if there's any key or core values, personality traits that you need to have when you're somebody seeking to start up a business.
You do have to have motivation.
Yeah.
And drive to be able to get through building a business.
Okay.
There's no doubt about it. That drive can't be externally fabricated, I guess you would say. It has to be something from within. And a lot of people have that work for somebody mentality because they want to be told what to do. They don't want to have to take that responsibility, think for themselves. And a lot of times it's kind of that responsibility, respect, self-respect that I think is lacking for somebody to actually start their own business.
Okay.
So as far as a trait you would need would be a desire and a motivation to lead your own way.
Yeah.
To be a leader. And there's so many different kinds of businesses that exact traits that are needed will vary based on what those businesses are.
Yeah.
But to be a business owner, you have to be willing to take responsibility for a various amount of aspects. If you employ people, if you're doing it on your own, are you selling off of Amazon? Are you selling, are you going to somebody's house and putting up crown molding? Whatever it may be, you have to be responsible to a degree. You have to be responsible to your customers. You have to be responsible for your employees and to yourself, because that's
you have
how
to know
you
your
build.
limits.
But that's building a business, running a business. You've got a whole nother area of finances and legalities that all have to be taken into account. I'm kind of a restless person. I don't like to sit still. Having to take care of as they say, wear 20 hats, that's easy for me.
Yeah. Jack of all trades kind of thing.
Because in business, especially if you're starting one, you don't have to be an accountant, but you need to understand accounting. And that difference is understanding the basics of how it works. It's kind of like in a book, the outline versus
the actual chapters.
Yeah. And if you at least understand the outline, you can work with your accountant and know what to ask them for.
Yeah.
What to provide for them. So that way you can be effective in those areas. If you're clueless, you're not going to know, hey, I need to do some research. And of course, with the internet, it makes it so much easier today. You don't have to actually go to the county office to ask. You can just look it up.
Yeah.
And say you want to get into a retail business and it's food. Well, now you need to go and see that, you're going to need a food license from the state. You're going to need certification to make sure that you're safe and that you're not contaminating foods and, crossing your raw chicken with your vegetables and et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if you're doing, say, construction, there's all those different legal aspects of, do you just hire a contractor?
Or do you get an employee? And put them on your books, because then you're going to be liable for them.
That's a whole nother aspect.
Yeah. well, this question, I mean, if people are watching this, I'm sure they either are interested in small businesses or they have history with opening small businesses. So I'm sure they are aware that if you do try to open up something in whatever category it is, you think it's going to be just that you're focusing your energy on, but you're really focusing on other things as well. Like, when we started this business, Justin and I realized, there's legal aspects. There's, you have to pay for a business fee. You have to do all these other things aside from just, making the podcast, making the website and all that stuff. But I mean, I get that. The question I kind of wanted it to transition into talking about like what made you change from working from somebody, because you talked about like working, and then doing like the side gigs a little bit. I wanted a little bit more history on your experiences working for people, like companies or corporations, and then what ended up being that light bulb moment on what made you decide, now I got to stop doing that and I got to, take that leap of faith and start working for myself. Because I'm sure that's the hardest part for a lot of people, to quit that stable job working for the man and then deciding to do something for yourself.
And I did work for somebody for a long time.
Yeah.
And I also worked for a major corporation, which is funny in your notes. You mentioned that,
the mouse.
Right. The Central Florida favorite, which I did work for.
Yeah.
Learned a lot. Tell you a quick story. Actually had a guy come through, saw me working in the kitchen. I was behind a 4-compartment huge sink, and he said, if your job is to come in every day and you have this huge sink full of pots and pans and it takes you 8 hours to finish washing all of them, and then you go home. Is that okay? I said, well, yeah, that's okay. And he said, now one day you walk in and there's only one pot there. And your boss says, Bill, I need you to wash that pot for the next 8 hours. He goes, and then you wash that pot for 8 hours and your day's over and you go home. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
I said, oh, that's horrible. And he said, why? You're doing the same thing you were doing. The difference is that for me, I have to be productive in my life. Mm-hmm. So for me to wash the same pot and pan over, same pot over and over, that's not productive in my view.
Yeah.
And as he explained to me, he said, but you don't know always the whole picture. So if they just need you to man that station and stay there, that's what you have to do in a corporation. What it taught me in hindsight was that I don't belong in corporations. I can't have that compartmentalized view of everything. And again, being productive. Because for me, if all I have is that one pot today and not a sink full, well, let me scrub baseboards. Let me help the guy on the other side of the wall. I have to do something.
Yeah. And it's not
that's
even
good. Yeah. I have to do something worthwhile.
And it's not even just to take up or make the remaining time that you have there feel like it's going by faster.
Not even relevant.
It's to make yourself feel like you're being productive.
Correct.
And this is almost like
that's self-motivation.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm interviewing myself because I'm going through the same thing at the hospital. And it's almost one of those key things that made me switch my shifts that I've talked about nonstop recently. But I'm the same way. Like, I do the same job. I mean, there's many layers to what the job entails. But when there are those spans of downtime, it's terrible for me. Like, I feel like I need to do something. I don't like the fact that people will then go, oh, but you're getting paid to do nothing. I don't appreciate that. Because then it's almost like I can see from the perspective of being a business owner, I don't want to be paying somebody to do nothing, period. But then it's also, I don't like just sitting there, not doing anything. This is why I have 3 jobs right now. And it's not even like big jobs. It's just, I'm helping out where I can. And then I got this on the side. So it's, I can relate.
Kind of can't sit still.
I can't. I really can't. But that's very interesting that you pointed that out.
That I think is one of the foundational principles.
Yeah.
Is probably the best way to put it. There's associations, which I know you wanted to get into this a little later, but it plays a big role. And I think to answer those first couple of questions, it was those associations that I had. I had my one and only, neighbor growing up who had his own little farm. Mm-hmm. And I had, at 14, had to start making money to pay the rent or live without electricity or landline phone, because cell phones didn't exist back then. And that put me in contact with small business owners.
Yeah.
So that was the people I was around. So I saw how they lived life. And I had an admiration for that.
So when you're saying, when you're saying you saw how they lived life, you're not meaning that they were like extravagantly wealthy, that they were just happy doing what they were doing.
Correct.
Okay.
Not their personal life, not what kind of car they drove, but how they lived life in business.
Yeah.
And how they could, I tried to get a job at a 7-Eleven when I was about 4, and I was crushed that they
4 years old.
They wouldn't let me. Yeah. Legit. And I was crushed that they wouldn't let me at least sweep the floors. Yeah. I just wanted to work. And then, but at 14, not legally allowed to work, but yet these small business owners that own their own restaurant, two restaurants and a hotel, 2 hotels, that allowed me to do odd jobs, maintenance, mow the grass, trim the lawn, trim the edges. They allowed me to do it, and they paid me, and they were independent business owners.
Yeah. And that's one of the
Outside
big
of that
point.
corporate,
Yeah.
structure, because in the corporate structure, back to those other hats, those legalities, that's what they have to worry about. And the corporate structure doesn't have room for individuality.
Yeah.
Where small
Or
business
kindness even
does have room for individuality.
Yeah.
In fact, it is based on individuality.
Yeah.
And if you have that belief and that desire, that's where you can do your own business and succeed.
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff can be learned. The idea of like the legalities, it's all out there. It's easy to find out, because if you open a restaurant and you're not certified, I promise you the state's going to let you know what you need to get done.
Yeah.
When they walk in the door and red tag your doors and kick everybody out for the day, they're going to let you know that you missed something.
Yeah.
But you have to have that inner desire to be responsible for all of it and take that responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good example of like the perks of having small businesses around. Because for that same token, how they were able to help you as a child and do these odd jobs, it made me, like light bulb. That's exactly what my my stepdad's doing with my younger brother. Since he's down, I mean, he's pretty much vacationing, kind of doing school from, remotely. They just opened up like a little nursery thing in their business outdoors. So they're bringing in all the plants, and my brother, like his passion is like plants. So then I've been bringing him over just to check it out, but then they've been letting him help. I don't want to say work, but he's been helping out, and I can see that he's enjoying it.
Exactly.
And I feel like this is something that he's going to remember and he's going to hold on to, because he's always talking about, when I get a summer job, when I get this. It's like, you're kind of already doing it and it doesn't feel like work. You're enjoying what you're doing. And it's like, hopefully this is something that he can stick with the same way that you stuck with that when you were helping him out, when you were helping out your neighbor with like the rebar or, the trim or the facade over in the restaurant. So, I mean, I would hate to see small businesses go away. And that's one of the reasons why I love, living in the USA.
Exactly.
That freedom.
And I've always strongly believed in that is the key to the United States.
Yeah.
The United States was founded to encourage exactly that. It wasn't the big corporations which have flourished in our country. It's the multitude of small businesses, because what a small business environment allows is it allows people like me who grew up poor, no rich family, no family other than, a mother and siblings, to eventually create a business and grow.
Yeah.
And as far as I wanted to take the business,
the only thing like in your way was basically how far you wanted to, like,
just me.
It was yourself.
I put my own limits
exactly
of how far I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what America allows.
Yeah.
I know and have met many people over my career in retail who came here from other countries because of that small business attitude that's here.
Yeah.
As opposed to the lack of support for small businesses. And, because what do you have left with big corporations? Government. That's not the world I want to live in.
True.
If I wanted to, I could move to Venezuela. Or,
I was going to use Venezuela as an example.
Many places that are similar where the government says what happens.
Yeah, communist rule kind of putting their pressure on the smaller people.
So, and in America, it's always been about that individuality and encouraging people to just do their own thing.
And that's really important. And one of the core values I was hoping you were going to bring up, the core value of freedom, because that's something Justin and I have talked about in vast and private. And I feel like that's one of the most important core values that we have, and what's kind of driving this is because we're able to have that freedom. We don't have to rely on, the big corporation or a mouse telling us like, you can only do this and that,
Right.
or you can't go past this barrier, because the only barriers we have are ourselves. And I mean, it's a really strong motivator for us. And I know some other people might not be the strongest motivator, but it should still be there.
Just to clear that up, places like, we'll call it the Mouse.
Yeah.
So we don't get in trouble for using, a copyrighted name or something.
Exactly.
They're important in our society.
Yeah.
The big corporations, there's people, we need people to work at McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally go there, but they employ a lot of people.
Well,
and they give a lot of people an opportunity to work who don't have the background and the motivation and the self-discipline to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do their own thing. They could learn it, but the motivation isn't there for the majority of people.
Yeah. I mean, we also need people to come to Florida, period.
And we do. And that's our tourism business, and,
Yeah.
and that's great
For the economy.
because you can only grow so many oranges and sugar cane and cattle and support so many people. Of course, we always have our retirement communities we can grow here, but that we'll leave that.
We were trying to phase that out for a second, but
we'll leave that to something different. Like what you guys are doing is interesting to me, because where's the new economy going?
What do you mean?
There's
like, it's
always
not...
a change.
Okay.
And an adjustment, and so many people are doing online. Like in your last interview, you mentioned like the new generation of TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before that was that new generation of you kids with, internet and video games and cell phones. And before that was TV.
Mm-hmm. TV, radio, then yeah.
Radio was way before TV, but when TV came along, there was a big thing about how TV was going to change our society. And I'm sure it's adjusted, but it's still just what it is.
Yeah.
It's progress, it's the way the world works, and we keep going, so
it's almost like it's a constant evolution of like what a business is starting to look like. Now we don't have to really, have a brick and mortar shop to open up this business.
Right.
Whereas that's what you're familiar with.
Right.
And then like you're seeing that change. I mean, either way, it also sets more of a level of growth that we can get to, a wider audience than just being like a small business that's a local business. We can only kind of attract what's near us, or have people that are willing to drive to us. Whereas now that we are not brick and mortar, we are on the internet, we can reach people like Vespertine, who's listening to us when we're asleep in the UK.
Correct.
So it's like, I think that also goes into a benefit when it comes to the state of like the internet and how technology is helping small businesses, because then it's not really a matter of being America, or no?
You're not geographically bound as we used to be.
Yeah.
And there's like everything that change encompasses. There's pros and cons. Styles change from region to region, from country to country. So there's always going to be some boundaries. And as humans, we're going to overcome those boundaries.
Yeah.
And
boundaries like
continue
censorships.
That's a whole different topic, sir.
Internet censorship and stuff in certain countries.
Whole different topic. But as far as building a business goes, you're looking at, again, what kind of business?
Yeah.
If you're building houses, you can only go so far. In fact, I was reading some small business commentary that the guy said, 25 years ago, I started this gutter business, and it's great. I don't go more than 5 miles from my house, but I sure wish I would have done what my friend did at the same time, who started an internet sales business and is now a multimillionaire, where I'm just still selling
Yeah.
seamless gutters in a 5-mile, radius.
Yeah.
Kind of explains it all there. But back to that, there's different businesses, different motivations.
I was going to say motivation.
Where are you at?
Because he's
What do you
wanting
wanna
the
do?
money, kind of. Yeah.
If money's your motivator, I'm sorry. That's my perspective. I'm not a big money motivator.
Yeah.
I enjoy freedom. I enjoy being able to be responsible for something.
Yeah.
And in my business, I'm able to be responsible for employees. So, like when COVID happened, one of my primary considerations was, how do I provide a salary that these 5 guys depend on day after day, week after week to put food on their table? Yeah. And I made sure I did it. And thankfully, we're blessed that we live in Florida and also run an essential business. So therefore, I was able to maintain everything.
Yeah.
And because of building the business from a responsible perspective, I've built up a great clientele where we stayed busy the whole time.
Yeah, and the reputation's
never
there.
slowed down.
Yeah,
because we did the right thing.
Yeah.
And we've always made that our primary focus. Count the dollars, not the pennies.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, because that's something that Justin and I were talking about right before you got here, actually. And we might even make it a whole episode in the future. But I mean, when you're seeking money as a motivator, it's never going to be enough. And that's a point that I believe he mentioned, that you're just always going to be you're going to be burning yourself out because you're always seeking more and more and more money instead of being fulfilled in what the actual job or the passion you have making that money is. But anyway, going back to the interview here. So before we move on to the next part, that was the summary of like your history of being employed for other people per se, and that key lesson you learned and made that light bulb moment happen was the dishes.
And it took me 20 years after that to open my own business. Oh. I worked for somebody else for the security.
Okay.
So I do understand that aspect clearly. Didn't have that strong background as a child. Mm-hmm. So when the wife came along, the children came along, there was a huge fear of not being able to provide for them. Yeah. I'd grown up poor with a lack of provisions and did not want to duplicate that for my children. I wanted to make sure that they had a roof over their head, and I didn't want them to be in the boat that I was in of, oh, the electric shut off this week. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll sleep on the floor so it's cooler. Which I've done. Water being shut off, so we ran a hose from the neighbor's house and backfed our house. Wow. I didn't want my kids to go through that, so I stuck to security for a long time. And as my kids got older and I could risk more without risking, I could risk me, not them.
Yeah.
So that's where I was fortunate enough in the last part of my working for somebody careers, worked for an independent business owner who had, in a real short nutshell, well-educated, great family background, he went to work for a gas station part-time while he was going to college and got offered to buy the business. Being entrepreneurial and another role model of mine, he did. He bought the business despite everybody saying, "Oh, you're not going to work for the big corporation like the rest of your family. You're going to be a gas station guy."
Yeah.
Ugh. and he did it. And the last time I saw him, he was making over $1 million a year and happy doing it.
Well, that's amazing.
The end of that story, he allowed me to run that business as if it was my own. So no risk, personal reward, because I was able to see the successes of the decisions I made, and also work closely with him to know the backside of running that business and building a business.
Yeah.
And during that time, I also met a lot of people that I was able to start delving into my own businesses with.
Networking
and opened a few businesses for other people. Real interesting life experiences during that time. And then one of those people that I was associated with said, Bill, when you're ready, you can do it. And that was that confidence that I didn't have as a child, which kind of goes back to the first conversation. Mm-hmm. That confidence was hugely important, and one of the key lessons that I've learned that stick with me. And he was a successful entrepreneur from a family of successful entrepreneurs from overseas who came to America knowing that this was where you can make something like that happen. And they came from a caste system where if you were a gas station attendant, then your kids were always going to be gas station attendants. Even if you owned the business, that's what your kids were going to do. And in America, you don't have to do that. If you want to run a gas station and your kid wants to be a doctor, you can do that. A lot of countries can't. People in this country sometimes, I feel, don't realize that. So back to the entrepreneurial side, that's what America's all about.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So that's about it for the time that we have. We're going to try to keep it true to the consistency of the duration of all of our videos. We're not going to overload you guys with like an hour and a half long video. So hopefully you stick around for Wednesday's episode. It's going to come out at 8 a.m. EST. And then you can finish up this interview with us where we interviewed Bill Nelson. So make sure you follow us on all of our social medias as well. Facebook, Instagram, Parler. Remember to share this video. It's going to help a lot of people if you know anybody that's interested in starting up their own business. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this if you haven't done so already. And until Wednesday, where we finish up this interview, go and get it.